Conspiracy theories are most often a smokescreen to divert us from the true evil.
My dad was right. This family's money is dirty.
Imagination is far more fascinating than reality.
Welcome to Working for Uncle Henry, Chapter 1. The invitation reeked of wealth. Heavy black cardstock with shiny gold and silver embellishments. The black tie event was the social highlight of the year for the small town of Rolling Rivers, and Simon Zachary was eager to attend. Not to hobnob with the wealthy and powerful elite, but to gain access to the Archer mansion. Zachary picked up the invitation from his ebony wood marble top desk and twirled it between his fingers. A sinister grin spread across his face in anticipation. He swung his chair around and walked to the window. Living on the top floor of Rolling River's tallest building gave him an excellent view of the city in all directions, but his gaze fixed on the Archer estate across the river. The mansion, built by the late Samuel Archer, rose 4 stories above ground. It was anybody's guess what was below ground. The house stood tall atop a distant hill with windows wrapping around, seemingly inviting anyone to take a peek inside. Tonight, like most nights, it was lit up like a twinkling prized jewel, the perfect disguise for its many secrets. Zachary rubbed his bearded chin, pondering if what he wanted was inside the house. Of course, that was a long shot. Keeping an object like that in your home, no matter how big the house, wouldn't be wise. But then, if there were levels below ground, Colonel Henry Archer would likely have secret rooms and hiding places. Finding those would be a challenge for sure, but Zachary hoped the lively activity of the party would distract attention and facilitate his explorations.
Yes, sir. I'll have the money for you in a couple of days, I promise, Parker Madison said to the portly body looming on the doorstep of his rental. Just as soon as my paycheck deposits, he added in the most reassuring, confident voice he could muster.
5 days,
the man replied in a gasping growl. His voice always sounded like it was in a battle with his lungs for oxygen. He held up 5 stubby fingers, one of which was cut off at the middle knuckle, then reluctantly retreated to his 20-year-old rusting sedan, just as another rainfall exploded from the sky. Parker couldn't deny the guilty pleasure of seeing the old guy get drenched, but at least he had given Parker a little more time. What Parker had not told him was this next check from Thomas Jefferson High School would be his last, because the school had terminated him, and he had no idea what he would do once the money was gone. His rent was already a week late, thanks to the most recent repairs to his motorcycle. The old Kawasaki Z100 was his only means of transportation, so he had to keep it running. Occasionally, he considered trading for a car, but so far it hadn't proved to be an economical exchange. Not to mention, he really liked the exuberant feeling of zipping through the open air. But right now, he feared he might be living in the open air if he didn't find another source of income. Childhood experience had taught him that God always provides, many times at the last minute. Being the son of a small church minister whose congregation seemed bent on keeping their pastor humble, money was always tight. The rain peppering down on the metal roof of the mobile home sounded like an ensemble banging on tin cans. Mobile home was actually too fancy to describe his place. Trailer in a trailer park more accurately characterized it. The rain had managed to find its way through the rusted joints of the roof several showers ago. Parker set the buckets and pans he kept handy back underneath the leaks. How he had forgotten to mention the leaking to the landlord again was a testament to how accustomed he was becoming to it. The rain had been falling for days, practically holding him as a captive audience to the incessant dripping. It was just as well. He had nowhere to go anyway. School was on holiday break, permanent break for him now. Couple that with the lack of friends he had managed to make during his short stint in this small South Carolina town, he was pretty much alone. Making friends didn't come naturally. He was a genial, handsome guy, but also an introverted bookworm. Most of the time, Parker preferred to be immersed in a book, living out someone else's life, but at the moment, he was tired of reading to the beat of drips in a bucket. He had made a few close buddies in college, as close as guys tend to become anyway. They did Bible study together with some fierce video game tournaments on the side, or was it the other way around? The Madisons had not allowed video games in their home, or even cable TV for that matter. But after one of Parker's college suite mates introduced him to Need for Speed, he was hooked. He liked going fast, and he'd gotten good at it. Girlfriends? There'd been a few dates, but certainly nothing serious. He wanted to find a nice girl and settle down someday. He just hadn't met her yet, and didn't see the point of getting entangled in a relationship short of that. He plopped down on his ratty sofa and drifted mindlessly into the mesmerizing, syncopated dripping sounds. Each of the various sized containers scattered around produced its own distinct sound. The pattering on the roof added background. At first it had been soothing and mildly hypnotic, but now he wanted to kick all the buckets and cans across the room, out the door, down the street, far, far away. But he didn't. He was not that kind of guy. Parker tended to hold his emotions inside. If he hadn't learned to do that as a teenager, he would have run away from home or been shipped off to a Christian military school, if there was such a thing. Instead, he stared at the empty bag of trail mix and carton of milk at his feet and felt sorry for himself. His dismal supper felt like his last meal. The cupboards were almost bare, and so was his checking account. Parker dared to glance once more at the crumpled letter beside him in the same spot it had been for 2 weeks. He picked it up and read it once more. Dear Mr. Madison, we regret to inform you that due to budget cuts, we are forced to eliminate your teaching position at Thomas Jefferson High School, blah, blah, blah. He crushed it back into its crumpled state and threw it down. Getting that job had been a surprise and a blessing, dropping in his lap out of the blue. Teaching seemed a safe route to take. Contrary to his shy, introverted character, a part of him wanted to make a difference in the world, somewhere, somehow. But who was he kidding? Parker was just an average, ordinary guy with no money and no plans now. Why? He murmured, gazing up toward the leaking ceiling in hopes God was listening, but there was only the sound of dripping water. The Orchid Club was a stormy sea of gyrating bodies, waving drinks and various other substances in the air, each one proclaiming their freedom and independence. Neon lights and lasers washed over the crowd, while high above a DJ spun a loud, thunderous beat. It was just like any other night. Everybody who was anybody in New York City would spend their time here when in town. In the middle of that sea was Jennifer Vincini, just back in the country after a month of runway shows, followed by a swimsuit shoot in Fiji and a perfume campaign in Paris. She was looking forward to the upcoming holiday break. Time for a little fun and unwinding before the runway shows commenced again in January. This was her favorite club, exclusive enough to keep out the undesirables, inclusive enough to meet new people, and always a good-looking guy there, eager to get to know her. She surmised the current prospect as they danced. Tall and handsome wasn't always a guarantee of stellar performance, but it certainly helped hers. She had just met him, as in exchanged names. Well, he knew hers, of course, and she would get his last name later, if it proved advantageous. She danced closer, brushing up against him more and more. He didn't discourage it. She had not drunk as much tonight as usual, thanks to the vaportinis the club had set up in a more private area. She had taken quite a liking to inhaling alcohol vapors. The effect was more of a relaxed high than regular intoxication, and achieved its desired effect much faster. She pressed against her partner and whispered in his ear, just loud enough for him to hear over the noise of the room, "I think I'll take you home tonight." He pushed back slightly to look into her eyes. A delighted grin spread across his face. "Let's go," he said, eagerly, as if having won the prize. "In a bit." She turned her back to him and relaxed against his body. His hand slid up her bare legs below her short, body-hugging dress. Oh, how she loved the pursuit and power of the tease. This game was seldom fulfilling if she wasn't in control. Parker's cell phone rang. It was his mother, again. He answered this time so she wouldn't worry. He made a brief attempt to sound like it had been a busy day, then settled in to listen to the latest family news. "Yes, Mom, I'm fine." "No, ma'am, I don't need any money," he reassured her while staring at the past due bills on the kitchen counter. "Yes, of course I'll be there for Christmas." "I love you too." He had made excuses for not going home at Thanksgiving, lots of papers to grade. As much as he missed his family, he dreaded going home. He knew the minute his father learned of his lack of employment, he would start in on him about his career choice. Reverend Madison had pushed and groomed Parker most of his life to become a minister, but for many reasons, Parker did not want to become his father. Parker stared at the dark water stains on his ceiling. He was starting to see images form in their shapes like one might do with clouds. None of them looked like angels, and he didn't know what God looked like, so he pretended. "What do you want me to do? I spent 4 years in college, thinking at some point you would give me a sign." He waited for an answer, but got only silence. Again. "Why won't you talk to me? A phone call, a text message." An email notification popped up on his cell phone. "Or an email," he joked. He opened it and read it. It was from his uncle, whom he hadn't seen or heard from since his early teenage years, the last time his family spent the Christmas holidays with the Archer family.
"Parker, I hope this finds you well and successful. I wish to discuss a proposition with you if you have the time. I wondered if you might pay us a visit after Christmas. Uncle Henry."
The invite intrigued Parker. "Looks like I'll have the time," he murmured. But he hesitated on replying. His father had essentially banned the family from socializing with the Archers. Parker never fully understood why, just that his father thought they were heathens and conniving thieves rolling in ill-gotten gain. Right now, the fact that his father would oppose it gave him reason enough to respond. "What a surprise to hear from you, Uncle Henry. I would love to visit. I can be there December 29th.
"Excellent. The 29th it is," came the almost instant reply.
Parker smiled with a spark of encouragement he hadn't felt in weeks, until he remembered the rent he owed in 3 days. That would have to be mailed, he decided. He just hoped Uncle Henry's proposition was going to be a lucrative one. He made a mental list of spare parts he needed to scrounge up to get his bike in shape for the long haul to Virginia, then climbed into bed. The rusty box springs squeaked and sagged under the weight of his slim, muscular body. He snuggled into the covers he had been using since high school, one of 2 sets his mother had rotated on his bed. He switched off the lamp and closed his eyes. A loud burst of thunder rumbled close by. More rain, he thought numbly. Then his eyes snapped open. How'd he get my email address? Jennifer's New York apartment was in the Tribeca district of Manhattan, a 2-story with a terrace, complete with bar, hot tub, and a nice view of the bay. This was her home as much as anywhere these days, with apartments in London and Milan, the family villa in South France, and family estate in Virginia. The recently redecorated River Terrace apartment in New York now boasted of 50 shades of gray, Jennifer liked to joke. She had just the right amount of colorful accents to jump out and make a statement, mostly in the form of artwork collected by her family. The transformation from the warm earth tones of the previous owner to the contrast of white on black and varieties of gray suited her, the cold, aloof side of her personality against her alluring charm and ability to keep her morals in the gray. 2 of her bedroom walls were full-length windows, The raised blinds permitted the mid-morning sun to invade her intoxicated slumber as she lay next to her dance partner from the night before. She had found it to be a moderately satisfying encounter, but doubted he would warrant a repeat performance, so no need to get his last name. Her cell vibrated on the nightstand.
Bonjour, Raphaël, she answered with a yawn. Oui, je pense toujours à vous.
Her face brightened with a faint smile.
Rien. Voilà comme je préfère penser à vous. Je serai le mardi. Oui. Au revoir.
She returned the phone to the nightstand and rolled her naked body on top of her bedmate and kissed him. A French boyfriend? He asked, kissing her back.
Maybe.
She traced a finger along his lips. Am I your American boyfriend now?
Maybe.
She lied, which she did exceptionally well. He smiled. What are you doing next weekend?
Shooting on a beach in South France. Barely clothed.
She whispered in his ear. I suppose your Christmas is booked. It was a half statement, half question, loaded with wishful thinking. His hands began to explore. How about New Year's Eve? Annoyed at his apparent assumption they were an item now, Jennifer rolled onto her back and fetched a cigarette from the nightstand.
I'll be with my family through the holidays.
She got up.
I expect I'll see you around again sometime.
She took a draw from her cigarette and, tilting her head back slightly, blew smoke softly over his head.
But you have to leave now.
She touched his lips with her finger, lowered her chin, and gave him a sultry stare of dismissal. She strolled into the bathroom and started the shower, hardly noticing his absence when she exited an hour later. Most men were disposable to Jennifer. There was her long-time casual lover, Raphael, and, well, that was about it for long-term. She met him when she was a teenager at home during a summer break. Home at that time was an apartment her mother kept in Paris. Raphael was a less than scrupulous businessman who had unofficially embraced situational ethics. His connection with the fashion world were responsible for launching Jennifer's modeling career. She didn't have to work, of course. With the proper management, her trust fund would carry her through life comfortably. Modeling gave her something to do. As for the many other men in her life, her father was not one of them. Vincent Vincini had been missing in action for most of her life. She didn't blame him for not wanting to be in her mother's company, although he did show up on occasion for a one-night fling. His visits to Jennifer consisted of once or twice a year at her boarding school in Lucerne, and even then he spent more time with her French teacher than with her. The only people who really felt like family were her aunt and uncle, whom she had spent every Christmas with her entire life, a family tradition she had no intention of breaking. She strolled to the bedroom window with the view of the Hudson Bay and thoughtfully gazed toward the Statue of Liberty. Yes, it will be nice to spend the holidays with family, and there's Buck, too. Buck Green, the Washington Nationals star shortstop, lived about a mile from her aunt and uncle. Next week, we'll meet more of the Archer family, including Uncle Henry. I'm the author and your host, Angela Mullins.